Tiho mauri ora. Peke mai, kake mai. Hamai tō wai ora. Hamai tō aroha. I runga ta tenua ta tangata. Nō reira haere mai, tēnā koutou. Puh.
Bujere, Mulinau, Taji Balang, Unia, Yoli Birong, Kumarago, Murang, Kamalego, Ora, Yora, Ungungamania, Talinorangun, Panyajimika, Chakalania.
How are cultural trends shaping millennials and Gen Zs around the world? And what does that mean for brands? I'm Mitchell Duff, and I'll be answering those questions and more as we dive into Spotify's second annual Culture Next report. We will explore the key outtakes from the report, followed by a special guest panel where we discuss trends and insights around listener data and behaviour and why this influences content curation, and how the younger generation position themselves as creators and entrepreneurs in today's cultural climate. This is all in an effort to ensure our advertising community is ahead of the game and fully informed. Be sure to stay tuned as we'll be joined by Arlo Parks for a special performance. So let's dive right in and discover how these important, influential audiences are shaping modern culture across the local region and around the world. So what did we uncover? Through our global reporting, we met entrepreneurs, activists, artists, and more. We discovered inspiring and surprising revelations from a generation ready to rebuild society from the ground up. Turns out, Zs are reconsidering college or uni. 1 in 3 might not go at all. They're rethinking the workforce. 65% plan to be or already are their own boss. Millennials join them in shaking off old school partisan labels, focusing on progress instead. And both generations overwhelmingly view 2020 as a cultural wake-up call. Today, we'll take a look at these 5 key trends outlined in this year's report. So let's start with a quick audience poll. We would like to know, does your brand or client currently market to Gen Z or Millennials? You can cast your vote in the Zoom window using the options provided. Now, into the 5 key trends from this year's report. Trend number 1, Gen Z starts from scratch. With long-standing norms around work and education upended in recent years, Gen Z has been hardwired with a DIY mentality. Whether it's defining their own education, making their own careers, or DIY clothing, this generation are born creators. We talked to Zs around the world who agreed on one thing: the traditional blueprints for success no longer apply. And for this entrepreneurial generation, the definition of success is not a monolith. This generation is clear-eyed about the challenges and opportunities that they face in education, work, and life. Nearly 50% of Zs we spoke to said older generations cannot act as guides to adulthood because way too much has changed in the world, and that was before the major shifts of 2020. When we spoke to that audience again recently, that number had jumped to 67%. Zs are also eager and optimistic about what their future holds. When we asked Zs what gives them more freedom than past generations, access was a running theme, which makes complete sense. Zs are digital natives that have never known a world where they couldn't pull up virtually any piece of content at any time. This access has given Zs unlimited creative opportunity. So there is our first trend, but what does it mean for brands? And how can a brand respond and build connections? A sizable 90% of Zs told us that they love understanding how ideas are born and that doing so makes them feel part of the creative process. Brands can resonate with this audience by supporting and speaking to the creator mindset. The first way brands can engage is to speak to an entrepreneurial podcast audience. Zs are into entrepreneurship, and of course, there's an audience for that. Connect with them through this passion point by sharing relevant messages about the do-it-yourself mentality. Secondly, brands can build campaigns around creators, support the ingenuity and resourcefulness of the young creators. One of our partners, Vans, launched a weekly personalised playlist experience called Off the Wall Wednesday, which helped listeners discover emerging artists they'll enjoy based on their listening history. The campaign helped Vans continue to champion creative expression by utilising Spotify's streaming intelligence. And finally, get creative with audio. Audio offers a unique opportunity to deeply engage listeners by using minimal production resources. This makes the ad medium essential at all times, and especially when brands' usual ways of working are disrupted. So let's take a look at a local campaign, one of many we're going to explore today from around the world, that hopefully inspire you all to create engaging campaigns for Gen Z and Millennials. The first, Jack Daniels From the Barrel.
Safe and warm.
Torn deep into my intuition. The fast seat, your arms around me. I didn't know that we would be spending such time.
We are Ivy.
Hey, I'm Steven.
Hey, I'm Dana, and you can hear my new track, Sushi in Tokyo, featured on The Local List, presented by Jack Daniels, music's first independent label.
Baby, when you talk like that, to get to know you, baby, when you talk like that, oh, my eyes stay close for my 80 wonders, baby, when you talk like that, oh, I could be the one, could you be the other, baby, when you talk like that, baby, when you talk like that.
That's definitely one of my favourite campaigns of this year, and it was great to see such an iconic brand leveraging Spotify's editorial streaming intelligence to connect local artists with new fans. Now, let's move on to the next trend. Families embrace audio at home. Here we explore how advances in technology are reshaping the dynamics to family life, with families tuning into audio content together at home more than ever before. And it's helping them to thrive in the midst of unusual and often difficult routine shifts, with 2020 being no exception. This trend is all about how families, both older millennial parents and Gen Z kids, connect through audio, especially as they're spending more time at home these past few months. These changes are reflected in our numbers as well. On Spotify, across 2019, we witnessed a 263% leap in listening among Zs and Millennials to kid-friendly and family-relevant podcasts on smart speakers. And then, in the first half of 2020, as people began to self-quarantine, we saw another significant shift. Kids' playlist streams have risen 19%, and Spotify free users collectively hit 21 million monthly minutes of family and parenthood playlist listening, underscoring audio's role in providing both function and fun at home. When you zoom out to include virtual assistants, voice activation, connected cars, and smart homes, it's clear that sound is changing the way Aussies and Kiwis families interact with one another and with the world beyond their living rooms. In other words, audio isn't just useful at home, it's a multi-generational touch point. And these days, that means a lot. When we asked Zs and Millennials what central theme dominates their life right now, their top answer was family, by a wide margin. So for the marketers and agency folk in the audience, how can you act on these insights? Families are embracing screenless entertainment options and devices that help streamline their day-to-day. Developments in audio make this more possible than ever, giving brands ample reason to consider it in their marketing efforts. The first way brands is join the family. Audio plays a role in family moments morning to night. Target podcasts, playlists and genres to be there when they listen to stories, belt out tunes from their favourite animated films or stream lullabies before bed. And use Spotify's connected home and in-car targeting to serve contextual creative messaging. The sizzling sounds of dinner time or sing-alongs that soundtrack socially distant school trips. Secondly, engage the theatre of the mind. Imagination isn't just for the kids. Use audio to take your audience places that video cannot. Spark memories and engage emotions by utilising immersive 3D sound coupled with great storytelling. We'll explore some of these examples shortly. And finally, find your voice. On Spotify, people spend most of their time doing something else while they're listening. Families are no exception. But unlike TV ads, audio stays with them as they move back and forth between work and play. To stand out in screenless moments, establish a distinctive voice that represents your brand when your ad plays via a family's smart speaker or connected car. So let's check out another example, this time with 3D audio. So for those of you who have headphones in, turn it up, and if you don't, I reckon you probably should go grab some. 3D audio can unlock all kinds of storytelling opportunities. In this campaign, Schweppes utilised 3D audio creative to bring to life the bubbles for their new ginger beer. So let's take a listen.
Immerse yourself in Schweppes essence. Have you experienced Schweppes essence?
Now on to our third trend, which is about something old made new and the quest for self-discovery. The concept of self-discovery isn't unique to Zs and Millennials, but they're doing it differently, thanks to technology and both the access and connectivity that it offers. Let's explore a little more. The research discovered young people are increasingly forming identities based on niche interests and bonding with others who share those same interests around the world. We found that 70% of Zs and Millennials said it's much easier to feel connected to a community today thanks to digital platforms. And when asked about the elements that fuel their self-discovery, audio definitely dominated, with 62% of Australians citing music and 64% citing podcasts. The rise of niche culture is the way that artists who stand out as different have become beacons to like-minded fans across the world. Think genre-defying Gen Z superstar like Billie Eilish and Lil Nas. And it's not just one or even two genres anymore. Nearly half of all surveyed listen to at least 5 genres regularly. So we've established young people are proud of their unique identities, and brands can definitely be part of that. 69% of Zs and Millennials said brands have the power to create communities based on common interests and passions. Help them celebrate their individuality. Brands can tune into a new era of targeting. Rather than targeting only age and gender, marketers should add additional elements to their strategies. Tap into Spotify's streaming intelligence to reach audiences based on topics like gaming, travel, film, or artists and subgenres that they love. The second insight is to live in the moment. Streaming audio lets you see which devices your audience uses and what times they're listening. Multi-device users stream Spotify 2.5 hours per day, which provides a wide range of identifiable moments, from workout to cooking to party and chill. Use context to be heard. And remember to reach passionate communities. Podcasts are often hosted by creators with very niche passions and flocked to by like-minded listeners. So determine what your audience is into and use Spotify's podcast category packages to target a range of audiences based on content, from comedy and music and gaming to true crime. We just mentioned how campaigns can be tailored to a certain moment or context to increase engagement. So now we're going to take a look at another example, this time with Unilever, who targeted users with custom creative tailored to the time, day, and even location and weather.
What will make this a perfect Tuesday morning? A great setting. You can't get better than beautiful Australia, can you? Some cracking weather. Well, this sunshine puts everyone in a good mood. And the irresistible, refreshing combination of blackberry and rich vanilla ice cream in a refreshing wee spa. Perfect. Now for a catchy tune to round it out. Wee Spas, made in Australia with love and real fruit since 1957.
Our fourth trend underscores what young people around the world agree with. They expect their culture to mix with civil rights and citizenship. But from talking to Zs and Millennials, we learned that they prioritise finding a collective purpose, working together in order to drive change, and take action over leaning into labels that slow progress. Their advice for how brands should meet the moment: be inclusive, be purposeful, give back, and be transparent. And topping that list, take action. In the year 2020, change feels more urgent than ever. As we spoke to Zs and Millennials around the globe at the top of the year, several causes emerged as areas of focus, including trans visibility, women's rights, loneliness, and mental health, and especially climate action. But as the year progressed, one cause emerged as the defining issue: the global Black Lives Matter movement, part of what's made 2020 a cultural wake-up call to 83% of respondents. Take Rani in Melbourne, who said she turned to Black-hosted podcasts to educate herself. Uniting all of these passionate issues are some fundamental themes. For one, they've all been linked in various ways to call for racial justice and equality, and more broadly, to the goal of building a better future. These generations want to know that your brand isn't just all talk, and walking the walk is Allbirds. The sustainable shoemakers at Allbirds used a playful, multi-format campaign to bring to life their message on Spotify. Their clever audio and video creative showed audiences that they could meet their shoes, specifically the trees and sheep that serve as the eco-friendly source of the sneakers. Let's take a listen.
Here I am, meeting my shoes. That's right, I'm standing next to a eucalyptus tree in my Allbirds tree runners, which were made from eucalyptus trees. Yep. If I'm being honest, it's not as momentous as I thought it would be. In my mind, I pictured it more mind-blowing. But who else can say they met their shoes? Nobody, I bet, because most people are more careful with how they spend their time. And their frequent flyer miles. Allbirds tree runners, breezy runners made from trees. Get yours at allbirds.com.
When we ask Zs and Millennials which qualities make sound powerful to them, emotional, therapeutic, and personal rose to the top, all of which supports the conclusion drawn from the rest of our research. Sound is the most human of technological platforms. At Spotify, we've often explored the fact that audio moves with us as we navigate our day. But as we increasingly use speech to control the tech in our headphones, homes, offices, and cars, that intimacy grows. This brings us to our final trend: sound is getting smarter. Audio is seen as therapeutic. 73% of Zs and Millennials said they use audio to cope with stress and anxiety. Podcasts also have a place. 54% of respondents said they're tuning into podcasts more often these days to stay informed or entertained. Podcasts offer people a deeply intimate, personal listening experience. You feel like the host is talking directly to you about the stories and topics that they're most interested in. So it was no surprise to hear respondents like Stephanie mention how immersive podcasts can be. As social distancing began, self-improvement podcasts also saw an uptick as people tuned to guided meditation and wellness talks to help them decompress and stay calm. And with less commuting and more working from home, we saw a bump in streaming across devices like computer desktops, TVs, smart speakers, and gaming consoles, all of which reinforces the humanity of sound, both its flexibility and importance as a source of personal comfort. So how can brands act? How can they connect in personal contexts when Zs and Millennials are engaged and attentive? Audio feels human, which makes it the perfect mode for your message. Let's dive into our final insights for brands. Firstly, talk to your customer, not the customer. Increasingly, it feels like audio knows us personally. Make your message direct by speaking to a super specific target audience in an identifying contextual moment. Secondly, think beyond the call to action. Podcast fans feel connected to their favourite show's hosts, and you can join that circle of trust. Consider ads that unobtrusively weave your brand into podcast content your audience loves. 81% of podcast listeners told us they took action after hearing ads during an episode, including looking up a product, connecting with the brand on social media, and talking about that brand with others. And lastly, expand your reach with audio. Audio is a powerful medium on its own, but adding it to visually driven campaigns also ups the impact significantly. As your ads reach people in different moments and mindsets, consider a holistic strategy that includes both elements. Campaigns on Spotify using video and audio have been shown to drive a 30% lift in brand awareness and a 122% lift in ad recall. Let's demonstrate with Lululemon, who embraced mindful relaxation and custom audio experiences for stressed out people on the go. Let's take a listen.
We interrupt this programming to give you a little space to fill your lungs and clear your mind. For more ways to connect to your breath this holiday, visit lululemon.com.
Feeling relaxed? Well, don't get too relaxed because we're about to dive into our panel with a number of artists, creators, music editors, podcast producers, all on hand to give their unique perspectives, followed by a very special performance. I'm thrilled to welcome our guests today. From Spotify, we have Artist and Label Partnership Manager, Jono Harrison. Welcome.
Morning, Mitch.
Our special guest, Australian artist Flynn Sant, aka flowerkid. Welcome.
Good morning.
And of course, music editor Andy Gavrilovic. Hey, Andy.
Hey, Mitch. Thanks for having me.
And from her hometown in Auckland, Persian Kiwi rapper CHAII.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
And finally, the hosts of G Thanks podcast, Georgia and Lily.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. I'm Georgia.
And I'm Lily. And we're sisters from Australia who have our own podcast called G Thanks.
Yeah.
A warm welcome to you all and thanks for being here with us. Before I have a chat with the panel, to those of you watching at home, feel free to send in your questions too. Just submit any questions you have via the Zoom Q&A window and we will get to as many of them as possible. Andy, I'd like to start with you first, given your experience as music editor for Spotify. Among the Gen Z and Millennial audience, what trends and insights are you seeing around listener data behaviour, and how does this influence the way that you curate experiences on the platform?
Well, let me just start off by saying that it's a really, really exciting time to be a music curator. At Spotify, our users and creators are always top of mind, and we have a big dedication to reflecting these changing trends in order to stay relevant and best serve the community. So what we're finding is that trends are changing, and trends are changing very quickly. This is, of course, due to the rise of social media, streaming, online savvy teens, and online communities. Young people have always been the ones driving culture forward and moving it and shifting it. And what we're seeing, the kind of trends we're seeing now are no different. On the music side of things, one very significant trend that we're seeing is that the concept of genre matters less and less to creators and fans, and young people have more complex tastes than ever. They know what they like and they know how to find it. This is one of my key takeaways from the Culture Next report, and I certainly see it every day, but Gen Z and Millennials like to break the rules of convention of what's expected of them, and they don't want to be placed in a box. So naturally, tastes and listening habits are going to reflect this. We're finding that these generations don't define their taste by a single genre and instead listen up to 5 different genres on a regular basis. Exploring and discovering is core to the experience of young fans on platform. We're finding that self-discovery builds community. So finding a playlist that really speaks your language, that speaks to you as a user, is finding a place where you belong, a place where you feel heard, and as a result, find your community.
This is a pretty interesting topic, Andy, and I feel that it's something that our viewers don't often get insight into. So I'd love to stay on this for a little bit longer. If you could take us through your thought process when curating, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I feel like we often get asked this question. I think a lot of people are kind of interested in our curation practices, so it's great to have an opportunity to speak about it. But what I've tried to explore lately in my curation when it comes to Gen Z especially is just a complexity of feelings that come with being young and growing up and everything in between. So I think more than ever, young people feel a lot and a lot more outspoken about it. So I curate a playlist called Softly that's still fairly recent and fairly new, and I've been trying to define the sound over the last few months, and essentially it's maybe like indie pop and alt pop, but with lots of variations of that sound. And I think calling it indie pop would have been really two-dimensional and a little bit misleading. I think audiences kind of expect a little bit more. They don't like that kind of like single genre approach that we used to have with playlists anymore. So using like a word like softly, I think, to describe the sound and maybe a feeling, and it's also a reference to a Clairo song. I think young audiences are pretty savvy, and that word just seems to connect with them. So when I was trying to define the sound for this playlist, I realized that a lot of the songs I was putting in there were quite nostalgic and a little bit melancholy and kind of overall had a sense of longing. So I think we're seeing in 2020 that nostalgia is a really big trend, but I quickly realized that for young people growing up in 2020, they're also experiencing a sense of nostalgia. So as soon as I figured that out and I thought that might be a universal experience for young people, I tried to curate around that feeling, and immediately there was a reaction. And I think a lot of young people could really relate to it. And we saw an increase in the kind of connection with the playlist.
Jono, you mentioned that you're a huge fan of Softly and Main Character.
Not just a huge fan of Softly, a huge fan of Andy's work and all of my colleagues in the Spotify Australia New Zealand music team. A huge fan of Crush, one of your playlists, Andy, but also you've got a playlist called Main Character, and I just love the concept behind it. I think speaks to everything that you've just said. Can you tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah, Main Character is one of the more kind of recent playlists that I've started, and it was really born out of a trend that initially started on TikTok, and I didn't know if there would be kind of a longevity to the playlist, but it seems that a lot of people, especially Gen Z, can identify with that feeling of wanting to be the main character, or like having the fantasy of being a main character, and this playlist is basically just soundtracking that experience. And it is really, truly the epitome of everything that I've just talked about being genreless and not really, pushing boundaries and not being placed into a box. This playlist has everything from Tears to Fears to David Bowie to like Morad. So it's really an eclectic mix, and it seems that young people are just loving it.
Me too.
Jono, I'd love to get your perspective on one of the next findings. It seems that music is more important than ever, both as a means of escape and well-being. In your eyes, how has music played a role in addressing these needs, especially in a year like 2020? And what opportunities can music streaming provide the younger generations?
Well, in a year like 2020, escapism is exactly what we need, I think.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's how I've been using music. Music and emotion, they're so intimately connected. And I think everyone here on the panel might have a song that they use to take them back to a moment, or, I don't know, with their partner. Flynn, maybe you have a song with your partner?
Absolutely. I can remember our first slow dance was to Wild Horses by the Rolling Stones, and I'll remember that forever. Yeah.
Well, ours is Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody. Like, that played the moment after we got engaged, and confetti cannon and thunderstorm and the smell of rain on the concrete. But those types of emotions are so intimately connected with music, and I could pinpoint like every date that I've gone on with my now wife it has a song attached to it. So I think that's one way that we can use music, especially in 2020, as a form of escapism. Another example, like Bon Iver's self-titled record, I used to listen to that on repeat when I just paced around the park during my Year 12 exams. If I hear any one of those songs, and it's not like it is a bit triggering, Year 12 exams.
Hopefully, stress-free.
I did okay. But hearing one of those songs takes you right back to that moment, and I think everybody has used that. Everybody on this panel, and I'm sure, in the audience as well, has used songs like that to take them away from reality and into another moment.
Yeah. We saw that phenomenon earlier in the year during COVID, with a 54% increase in listeners making nostalgic-themed playlists on Spotify. We also saw an uptick in the share of listening to music from the 50s, 60s, 70s and 80s. It doesn't sound like this surprises you, Jono.
Not at all. It's exactly what I was talking about. Nostalgic track is, takes you back to your moment of nostalgia. It could be anything. It could be a song that's 18 months old, or, was in the hottest 100, a year or two ago or something like that. Or it could be something that your grandma had on vinyl and takes you back to memories of family or something like that.
So nostalgia just not only a long way back, just a little way back as well.
Yeah, absolutely. An album from, a nostalgic moment for me, Sampa the Great's album, The Return, was my favourite album of last year and is finally getting the recognition that it deserves this year with bodies like the ARIA Awards and whatnot. But that record takes me back to this moment where we put on this event. All of Sampa's friends and family were there, the whole diaspora community in Melbourne, and we had this huge party celebrating that record and celebrating what home meant to her. That was 12 months ago, and those fond memories, nostalgia doesn't mean that it has to be a decade ago.
Exactly, and it still lives with you today, yeah.
Absolutely, it just takes you back to a moment.
CHAII, I'd like to get your perspective on these next two topics. Firstly, it seems that Gen Z and Millennials are leading the way when it comes to drafting new blueprints to things like education, work, religion and politics. Is this something that rings true to you as both a millennial and an artist? And is it something that you think about when you're creating your music?
I definitely do think about that a lot when creating music, and I feel very lucky about the time that we're in and being able to express ourselves and our views very freely in different art forms. And for me personally, that means a lot for the type of music that I make and not having to have the pressure of fitting in a box. I do feel like we're in a very accepting and developing time, and we have internet to thank for as well. So, yeah.
And looking back at 2020, like so many artists at the moment, I'm sure you've had to adopt in the wake of the global pandemic. How has this changed your creative process, and has it made you more resilient as a creator?
It's definitely made me more resilient in a different way, because I feel like in this industry, it's always quite up and down. So as an artist, you adapt quite quickly, but the whole year got flipped upside down. We were meant to be doing more live shows and go overseas. And I found myself suddenly doing more content and just planning the times ahead. And it kept me on my feet. It's kept me on my feet going in and out of lockdowns. But yeah, definitely more resilient.
Jono, you've got some pretty exciting news.
Well, it's not my news, it's CHAII's news. It's really exciting. I think the proof is in the pudding with her work during the pandemic. Mona, it's amazing. You're now nominated for the Spotify's Breakthrough Artist of the Year Award at the Aotearoa Music Awards this Sunday, formerly known as the New Zealand Music Awards. So congrats, like amazing. What can we expect from you this weekend?
At the awards, we're actually performing at the awards, which I'm really looking forward to. And yeah, we're going to wear some crazy outfits and have fun. But it's I didn't really expect to get nominated. There's just so many amazing, talented musicians and artists in New Zealand. So yeah, very excited.
Well, we rate you. The Spotify music team has picked you as our first radar artist from New Zealand, which is Spotify's global emerging artist program. So we're really excited to help you supercharge you at the early stage of your career. So just like, thanks for making the music. We're so proud to be able to work with you on this.
Oh man, thank you so much. Thank you so much. That means a lot. Just having the support from Spotify is just mind-blowing. It's great. Thank you.
Along with resilience, mental health and self-care were highlighted as a focus for millennials and Gen Zs in 2020. And music wasn't the only audio format which stood out as a remedy. Podcasts were another. Given your expertise in podcast programming, I'm keen to hear your thoughts, Andy. One of the insights we uncovered in the report was that 1 in 4 Aussies said that they listen to mental health-related podcasts. How do you think podcasts are creating meaningful connections with audiences, and particularly important among Zs and Millennials?
Well, it's a really interesting insight that so many Australians are listening to mental health-related podcasts. And of course, it's no wonder it's no wonder as mental health becomes one of the key issues in society's well-being, and not to mention going through a global pandemic and everything else that's happened in 2020. So we're definitely seeing that people are seeking help and advice from trusted sources, and podcasts definitely plays this role. We've seen that health and fitness and lifestyle and health are 2 of the top growing podcast categories in Australia. So taking these observations into account, in October, Spotify launched Daily Wellness in Australia. It's a playlist that curates a personalized mix of motivational podcasts and feel-good music, and it's designed to help users find positivity, mindfulness, or peace within their daily routines. And this is just one of the ways we're using a mix of original and partner-created content, as well as the music on our platform, in a new way to create positive listening habits and connections. And in many ways, podcasts are just like music in terms of being able to make a connection really quickly. You know, it's audio content that connects you with culture and trends in a really deep, personal way. Podcasts use familiar voices, which create that immediate and personal connection between speaker and listener. And with expert guests covering every possible topic you can imagine, it's really easy for everyone to find something that they like. 2/3 of Australian podcast fans say it's easy to feel emotionally connected to a host, and that tuning in is like listening to a friend. One of my favorite examples in our original slate is Georgia Productions and Lily Grace from our original podcast, Gee Thanks, which we have with us today.
Did you have anything you wanted to add there, Jono?
The voice in between the Daily Wellness podcast is so soothing. Yeah, I just wanted to make that comment.
I'm a huge fan of your Daily Wellness, and I actually love how personalised it is for me. Well, Georgia and Lily, Andy just touched on why podcasts are so important, and Gee Thanks came up. So let's get the creative perspective now. 2/3 of Aussies, Zs and Millennials said that it's easier to feel connected today thanks to digital platforms. You have a presence on a number of these as both podcast hosts and Gen Z. What is your personal take on why podcasting is so engaging?
For me, I think being a podcast host, one, is just amazing. I love this job. Yeah. But it's also amazing because I listen to a lot of podcasts myself, and when you listen to a podcast, you just feel a part of the conversation. You feel like you know the host's story. You get to know the person, and
it's strange because even though you can't say anything, you still feel like you're having a conversation.
Yeah, because I think you respond in your head.
Yeah, you're like, I agree. Yeah. Yeah.
But even on like long drives alone, it can get pretty lonely, and I'm one to overthink. So putting on a podcast even just distracts me and takes me into a different world because there's so many different types.
Same with when I clean my room. I literally I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm going to overthink something. Or you just want something that your mind can occupy itself with while you're doing things that don't require much brain work.
Yeah.
So I really believe that like podcasts are a really good way to engage my YouTube audience as well, because on YouTube my style of content is ridiculously different. It's like I do kind of comedy and sketch type things on YouTube, and so I have to be really upbeat and like speak like this and kind of like go up and down with tones and like kind of be a bit over the top. But on YouTube that's normal, and that's what people expect. They expect like
short, sharp and sweet.
Yeah, they expect you to be instantly on and engaged and
entertaining 24/7.
Yeah, and if there's a pause, people people don't like
Click off
hearing,
the video.
yeah, like and ahs, and like if I spoke to the camera like I'm speaking right now, which is just having a conversation, they just would not be as engaged because it's not the platform for it. Like we're kind of taught that YouTube's a space to be extra, whereas podcasts, like you can just kind of like when you turn a podcast on, you expect it to feel like a conversation and a totally different
longer.
thing. And because it's longer and like...
You can really speak your mind, and that's what I like about being a podcast host, is that I can get vulnerable, I can get deep, and I can talk about things that on YouTube I would have a time limit. I can only talk about this for a minute because it's not that entertaining, or
I just don't talk about it at all.
Yeah.
I'm like, my YouTube audience probably won't engage with this.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like...
Podcasts
they probably will find it boring.
Podcasts just give us a whole different, what's the word? They give us a whole different platform that we can talk on.
Yeah.
And it's honestly, I just love it. Yeah.
Thanks, Lily and Georgia. It's a pretty interesting contrast you point out as creators across both mediums, and that different levels of authenticity and vulnerability which podcasts allow, and the ability to build trust with your audience. Flynn, the next question's for you. We touched on the creative process with CHAII earlier, and the study revealed that Gen Z are born creators and very entrepreneurial. In fact, 91% of Australian Zs and Millennials told us that they love understanding how ideas are born, and that doing so makes them feel part of the creative process. As a Gen Z and a creator yourself, how do you relate to this insight, and does it resonate with you when you're creating your own music?
Well, absolutely. I feel like nowadays we have so much more access to so many platforms and so much information, and it just sparks creativity within us. And I know as a fact that I love seeing the creative process from start to finish, and it's so rewarding seeing that go through. And I definitely think that over time, we've just loosened up in terms of what CHAII was saying before about not fitting into that bubble and, breaking those boundaries. And I think as a good comparison, actually, I would say that there is also a difference between millennials and, say, Gen Z. I'd say that millennials had to work a lot harder than Gen Z in general a little bit in terms of music, because they did have to stick to that structure, and they were told to do that. They were told to have this structure in terms of pop music, and they stuck to it, and they did what they were told. Whereas in terms of Gen Z, we tend to break that bubble, and we've broken that structure, and we've made it for ourselves. So I think it's a good comparison. And to say, what's two examples of two artists? Well, say a millennial artist such as Amy Shark. She makes brilliant music. She's just as successful, and she does make pristine pop music, and it's all to structure, and it's very good. And in comparison to a very different artist from Gen Z, say Billie Eilish, who is changing in terms of structure and flipping things around, and a different approach, because I guess she doesn't have those restrictions that the millennials did have, I would say. And I would say in terms of careers, in terms of the creative arts industry, it's a lot more accepted and accessible to us now. Back then, I'd say that they would say it's an unrealistic career. A lot of older people would say that to us, and I was told that when I was a kid. But nowadays, it's so much more accepted, so much more accessible, and we're told that we can chase those dreams no matter how crazy they are. Yeah.
Can I pick up on one point, because I think it shows in your own music as well. I suppose that millennial pop stars, shall we say, your Guy Sebastians, your Amy Sharks, and your sort of people of that era, there's a bit of a science to creating a pop song in that there are 3 minutes 30 seconds, which is sort of something that create a community that you think about. But your latest single, Misandry, which has hundreds of thousands of streams on Spotify now, how long is that? And did you actively, I suppose, work against the science of what a pop song should be?
Yes, actually, I was told many times, oh, it's just a little bit too long. Maybe we can shorten this bit. And I said, no, screw it. I'm not going to do that. It's my song, it's my art. It's about 4 minutes 30, something like that. And I tend to, not worry about time in terms of how long one of my songs is. If I'm showing and telling what I'm believing in, then I don't care how long it's going to be. And I think my viewers and my listeners appreciate that a lot more. Yeah.
I love how uncompromising you are in that. I think that's very cool. But also that millennials and Gen Zs, one thing we have in common, nose rings. They're still in.
Nose rings, absolutely. Poking holes in our faces. Just there.
Something that still goes across generations. We're now going to bring it into the studio for the audience Q&A. And a big thanks for joining us, CHAII.
See you guys. Thank you so much for having me. Bye.
And of course, thanks to Georgia and Lily.
No, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
We loved it.
Our first question from our Zoom audience is actually for me. The question is, I work for an environmental non-profit that is hoping to resonate with the younger audience. Is Spotify more a brand awareness place for us to do, or do you see that they can convert directly from the platform? Well, I guess Spotify definitely does resonate quite well with our younger demographic. We've just spoken about Gen Z and Millennials today. And I think there's definitely a big branding play that we've got here. And we've heard that earlier on, using both video and audio and display on Spotify can definitely deliver some brand improvements. And there's also the direct response play. So utilising our targeting, our first party data is a huge strength of ours. So overlaying targeting can also help with direct response. And looking at things like our programmatic buying platform can allow you to do things like footfall attribution. So driving people in store or to a certain location to take action. So we've definitely got that branding place and as well as that direct response piece. So plenty of opportunity. The next question from our Zoom audience is directed to everyone on the panel. A key takeaway was advice for how brands should meet the moment. So being inclusive, being purposeful, giving back and being transparent. Working with artists and the wider music community, do you guys feel that brands in Australia are answering this call? And as an artist, Gen Z Flynn, I'm going to hand it to you first. What do you think about brands in Australia and are they coming to the party?
Well, I think that it's a bit... I've got an overall kind of distrust for a lot of brands in terms of what they're doing for the community and for movements. And I think that some things that they really need to work on is how are they contributing more? They need to contribute more. They need to put in, whether it's more money and more time into helping communities and minorities. And I want to see that. And as a consumer myself, I don't want to see the wishy-washy social media posts as such. I want to see how you are helping in that community, and I want to see what you're doing to make the world a better place. Yeah.
So from the inside out, from an organisation standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point. I think it's really important for brands in general not to jump on a moment per se in a tokenistic way, but I think it's important to, from the inside out, make sure that you're doing the work with that community that you're looking to be a a part of, because you're looking to be a part of a community.
Yeah, it's very family-based almost. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. I think NAIDOC Week is a really good example of that. We've learnt through consultation with community over the last couple of years that the work should be year-round, and NAIDOC Week is actually a moment to celebrate the work that you're doing year-round. And half of the work that we do with First Nations artists and First Nations industry executives is behind the scenes. It's closed-door conversations asking how we can Spotify as a platform and as a brand serve them as a creator community. But I think there are other examples, perhaps of other brands who I've seen who have done good work in this space, like not specifically this space, but with music strategies like Bulmers, Jack Daniels, we saw the example of before, Macca's and others. There's Red Bull, I think, have a great music strategy. And over the years have really invested across the board, behind the scenes, panels, festivals, they've got a label, they're kind of everywhere. I think that's a good example of a brand really investing across the board in music and creators.
Yeah, and as Jono said, it's about wanting to, if you want that inclusivity, if you want to be a part of that community and that family, you've really just got to put in the work, and that's all it takes. Yeah.
Be completely genuine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Andy, have you got any thoughts?
Yeah, it's really great to see that social impact and the importance of representation being such an important issue today. I think we're way too switched on and way too smart as a society for performative activism, and it's not just good enough to say you'll do something or to look like you're doing it. You actually need to do it. And this is such an important step forward. I think we have a long way to go, but it's an important step forward. So at Spotify, we've always been committed to being a driver of change and meaningful impact. And we carefully consider representation in our editorial portfolio, as well as creating opportunities for First Nations and LGBTQI creators, with a big focus not on equality, but equity, which means that not all creators have the same opportunities, and we take this into consideration.
There are definitely a few brands that are getting it right. Patagonia and Lush Cosmetics were among those who temporarily closed their office and stores so that employees could participate in 2019's global climate strike. And in response to the Black Lives Matter movement, many stood out. PayPal committed more than $500 million to supporting Black and minority-owned businesses. Tech giants like Microsoft and IBM pledged to stop sharing facial recognition software with the police. But for most brands, getting a balance between commercial outcomes and being genuine would be a pretty tough juggling act within an organisation, but it's an important one to master. We've heard a lot today about the need to be genuine in an approach to being inclusive, transparent and purposeful. And this is the baseline expected of this generation, and brands really need to build it from the ground up. As brands look to lean into audio, both music and podcasts, they need to understand the audience more, how they're listening and what they're doing. And through our streaming intelligence, we can definitely help. Well, I think that's all we've got time for today, guys. It's been quite the discussion. Thanks so much again for your time, Jono, flowerkid and Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for those of you who have asked questions on the panel but didn't get a response, we'll definitely do our best to get back to you as soon as we can. And a big thanks to you. We've covered a lot of content. Remember, you can head to ads.spotify.com to download the full Culture Next Trends Report, or reach out to your Spotify advertising representative for more information on how brands can create a conversation with Gen Z and Millennials. But don't go anywhere. We now have a performance for you direct from the UK with Arlo Parks. Check it out.